Hello everyone, welcome back to AR Fitness and Athletics, episode number 9. Today, I want to continue on the same thought that we left off with last episode of adaptability and how it applies to physical activity. So let's get to work. At one point or another, I'm sure you've heard or possibly even used one of the following lines. I used to do this, but then I stopped once I finished school. Or I was going to start that program, however, I don't work there anymore. Or possibly, I was in the middle of training in this particular way, but then I got injured. So we have the statement sentence, we have the but, and then we have what I call the fall, where it all went wrong. That can be a multitude of things. But I'd like to sum it up with one particular sentence. So it goes, the statement, I used to do this, the but, and then the part that I like to fill in right now, which is, but my situation has changed. So whether it's an injury, whether it's a change of location, whether it's a time restriction, it can all be summed up by saying, my situation has changed. I'd like to share with you something personal when it comes to this particular line, because it was actually a life changer for me in many ways than one. When I was in university, I had a friend and training partner, and we trained throughout university and even years beyond that. And we would train 4, 5, even 6 days a week, and it was great. However, he went on his life course and I went on my life course, but we always kept in touch. At that point, I had trouble maintaining a system or a routine. I would be great for 3 or 4 weeks, and then life would get in the way. So as I kept in touch with this friend, he would ask me, hey Rob, how are things going with the workout? And I'd tell him, well, great for 3 or 4 weeks, and then blah, 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 work gets busy and life gets busy and family gets busy. And I said, I just can't train the way I used to. And here's the life changer. He said, Rob, we're not in university anymore. You're going to have to change your program. And you would figure with a university degree behind me, starting my own business, you think, Rob, you should have sense enough to have thought that. And you're right, I should have had that sense. However, I was stuck in that routine, in that linear thought of training of this is how I train and anything other than this is no good. Needless to say, I took his advice and I did. I changed, I adapted. And I took that line to heart with everything I did. We know that change is a constant in life, even when you don't want it, especially when you don't want it. So we have to adapt. But me just saying you need to change, you need to adapt, it's too simple. We need to know how. How do we facilitate this change? How do we adapt? So there's 3 steps that I'd like you to think about when something comes your way. Step number 1. First, you need to identify the change. What is changing? So is it an injury? So that being health condition? Is it location? Is it time? Is it social commitment? Identify the change. Now, once you've identified the change, you need to identify what you can still do. My guess is when something changes that it doesn't all change. There's always something that remains a constant. So let's take time, for example. So let's assume that the change is the time that you work out. You normally train at 4 o'clock. However, due to social commitment, due to work, you can no longer train at 4 o'clock. You have to change your time to 7 o'clock p.m. That's fine. We've identified the issue, and now we're identifying what we can still do, which is you can still do whatever routine you're doing. You can still do your workout, whether it's playing sport, whether it's going to the gym. You need to identify the positive end, what you can still do. So now we have step 1, identify the change. Step 2, what you can still do. Step 3 is move towards the positive end of that change. Typically, we get hung up on the negative part. So I no longer train at 4 o'clock. That was ideal for me. I like training at 4 o'clock. The sun was still up. I was still not exhausted from the day. Your situation has changed. You need to adapt now. So perhaps even the training itself needs to adapt a bit because it's later. That's something to be seen. But you need to move to the positive end of that change, which is you can still do your activity. You can still work out. Let's take something a little more complex. Let's say it's an injury. So let's identify it as a left knee injury. So identify the change, health change. Identify what you can still do. Well, you still have your right leg, you still have your entire upper body. You can still maintain a high level of activity. Step 3, move towards the positive end of that change. Yes, your left knee is injured. We're not going to ignore it. We need to rehabilitate that. However, there's still plenty of things you can do. Move towards the positive end of it. You can still do abdominal work, back, arms, chest. I guess you wouldn't be able to do any running or kicking exercises, but there's still things you can do to stay active. So you have to maintain that positive thought, be in that positive frame of mind so you can continue to do something. Again, it's something. It's not what you normally do, but it's better than doing nothing. That we know as a fact when it comes to your health, that doing a little bit does give you a lot more than doing nothing at all. So we've talked about change in a more negative manner. However, not all change is negative. It can be positive. Let's assume that you've been training 2 to 3 times a week, but now maybe you've retired or something else has changed in your social life that allows you more days of training. Well, that's positive. That's a positive change. A little nicer to handle, a little easier, but once again, we do want to identify it. So we identify the change, more time on our hands, identify the positive aspects. I can now continue to do what I've been doing. I can do more of it. Or I can add a different activity to what I'm doing because I have more time. And then move towards the positive end of that change, which means continuing on a good road to health. Once again, this applies to everyone because change affects us all and it affects us at all times in our life. So we want to make sure that we identify when the change happens and that we get a hold of it and we tackle it the way we want, as opposed to letting the change drive us and possibly into a negative road, which we don't want to be. So let's follow those 3 rules. Let's apply it to physical activity. Let's stay healthy. I'll see you next time in the next episode. Be good, and thanks once again for watching.